This podcast is dedicated to people who are ready to take ownership of what it means to be born with high sensory intelligence and how to bring it into service for business, career, and organizations globally. Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of the High Sensory Intelligence Podcast with me, Willow McIntosh, founder of Illuminance and leader of the High Sensory Intelligence movement. And if you've been following the episodes over the last couple of weeks, I've been focusing on what it means to be bringing our high sensory intelligence into business, how to take our skills and abilities out into the field, so to speak, and actually try our abilities in front of clients and being very, very honest with ourselves about the skills that we have and how that is of great importance, especially for us to do well in business. It doesn't work for us to try to pretend to be like other coaches and consultants. We have a very unique skill set, and the source of our power is in the ownership of that. And the more that we own it, the more our body's open to it. And the intelligence of the high sensory intelligence all comes together into an ability that we are aware of to an extent where it is like a second nature. And it's something that we refer to and use on an ongoing basis throughout our business lives. I like that intelligence piece that just came through there. You know what it's like when you are not in your body. This was a piece that I really had to get my head around. It's not actually what I want to talk about today, but I'm just going to say this piece because it just came through literally in my body there, so I want to share this. I used to be so disconnected from my body, so I was totally living in my head, which is where my full self was created, and the process of me actually allowing my conscious awareness to fall into my body gave me all access to my abilities. It was actually understanding the intelligence of my body, that my body actually has its own intelligence, and a great deal of my ability resides in the connection with my body. So it's actually a holistic, integral awareness of the whole of me. And so that is a very important piece and step in us claiming ownership of our high sensory intelligence, because we process very deeply, so it's very easy for us to get stuck in our heads. But actually, the real source of our authenticity is in our bodies, it's in our hearts, it's in our souls. So that conscious awareness of dropping our awareness into our body is a very, very important part of the step for all of us. It really, really makes a difference when it comes to this important step of ownership. So the piece that I want to talk about today is around believing it. It's around trusting it, and it's around believing it. One of the things that always amazes me when I run my facilitation sessions, and actually I recently did a live facilitation on a session with the wonderful Julie Bieland with part of her community. And in that session, which is actually, it's live on Vimeo, so I have permission to talk about it in a bit more detail. Obviously, we have the permission of the wonderful Rebecca, who took part and was the participant in the facilitation session that I did. And one of the things that comes up regularly during the sessions, and it was exactly the same thing for me during my process, in my process of initiation, as I like to call it, initiation into my own high sensory intelligence, is that we are born with and living with this high sensory intelligence, with this gift, with this ability. But until we are actually shown it from an objective point of view, it's very difficult for us to realize that we are living with it. So there is this analogy, I keep referring to it, but it's a great analogy. It's the analogy of that a fish doesn't know it's swimming in water until it's shown, until it either jumps out the water or it's taken out the water, and then it's like, oh, okay, wait a minute, I've been in water all this time. So it's similar for us. It's this process of ownership, but it happens from an objective point of view. So whilst, of course, it helps enormously to have this facilitation process with someone who has been initiated themselves, so for someone who's able to witness it and see it from an objective point of view, which obviously helps me to be able to do the facilitations, because I've been through that process myself, so I have that conscious awareness of my own high sensory intelligence being a part of me when I wasn't really aware of it properly, into having an objective viewpoint to like, okay, now I fully understand what it is, which is another hugely important part of the facilitation process. So this piece around believing it and trusting it, this is what is so important. And the way that we can begin to do that is to remember that as high sensory intelligent people, we are born with a genetic difference. Our biology is different. We are processing cognitive data more deeply, and the apparatus that we're using to do that is different to people that don't have the trait. So that means that we are already experiencing the world differently. We are already in a place of higher sensory awareness. So for many of us that have taken the various quizzes that are out there, the quiz that Dr. Elaine Aron has designed in order to identify ourselves as having the trait of sensory processing sensitivity, which is what high sensory intelligence is based in and comes from, or there's the quiz on the Illuminance website. When you take that quiz, if you score high on that quiz, then it's very, very likely that you were born with the trait of sensory processing sensitivity / high sensory intelligence. If that's the case, then you are in a place where it's time to start trusting it. It's time to start believing it. It makes an enormous difference when we are coaching, facilitating, whatever our line of work may be, when we are referring to the higher sensory abilities that we have to either feel that other person's energy, to get a sense of the bigger picture, to be able to download information and to be able to communicate the information that we are channeling. So the key piece here is about believing it. It starts with trusting it. It starts with believing that the extrasensory information that we're getting is making a difference. It's actually giving us an ability and a gift. So remember that nature has given us this trait. It's not something that we develop because of our conditioning. It's something that we are born with, and it's, as I say, it shows up in 100 species of animals. So it's time for us to believe it and to trust it. And whilst that may feel like a bit of a leap of faith, at the beginning it does need to be a bit of a leap of faith. So there's got to be a shift of awareness from perhaps what many of us do when we take the test, take the quiz, and then we order the book, the amazing book that Dr. Elaine Aron read. And then we perhaps tend to switch into a bit of a survival mode where we're thinking, okay, well, how do I live with this trait? Perhaps I shouldn't really tell anyone. That's definitely the wrong thing to do. We should be sharing our needs and expressing the gifts that it has. So it begins with a shift from like, okay, I've got this trait, I need to live with it now, into, wow, I've got this trait. Well, how is it specifically working through me? What is it? What exactly is it doing? So many of the sessions that I actually do, it's always astounding to be able to witness the incredible ability that is presented to me when I do the sessions. So the amazing session that happened with Rebecca earlier this week, we were talking about her ability. Well, the ability that was presented was a passion that Rebecca has for translating language between two people, or perhaps many people. But it's her gift and ability to be able to translate language. And as soon as Rebecca started to talk about this passion, immediately I saw the greater picture of what her high sensory intelligence is as a person born with sensory processing sensitivity. Immediately, I know it's all about connection. The reason that Rebecca is so passionate about this is because underlying her joy in helping people to understand each other is that she's helping them to connect. She's helping them to be seen. She's helping to build bridges. She's helping love to find a way to express itself between two people or between two groups of people. When people can't understand each other, then they are unable to connect. They are unable to feel safe. They're unable to be seen. So we were able to identify that underneath that is this incredible passion and ability that Rebecca has to do this. So as the session progressed, my role as a facilitator is to help her to see all of it. So even though I can see it as soon as the session begins, my role as a coach and facilitator, and it's the same for you, as you're well aware as a coach, that we have to allow our coachees, the people that we're facilitating, to work it out for themselves. Otherwise, they can't take ownership of it. So as we're going further along this path of Rebecca becoming aware of what she's actually doing, it gave me again an indication of like, wow, it just blows me away how we can't see it. We can't see it for ourselves. We do need the support, I think, to take it to the next level. And I'm not saying like, oh my God, you've all got to come and you've all got to go and get some kind of facilitation. I do believe that we all should be being coached ourselves as coaches. I think we are always developing and evolving in our path and our journey. And I think it is of enormous benefit for us to be continuously evolving and developing ourselves along our own path, which very much helps the work that we're doing. Whilst I believe that is a very important part of the process, I am also suggesting through this episode today about the opportunity that we have to engage our ability to be able to see things from the bigger picture. We have an innate ability to do that. We have an innate ability to be able to witness our own thinking. So as high sensory people, that's one of the abilities and traits that we have. And sometimes that drives us mad because we're analysing our own thinking. But if we just lift that a little bit higher and actually embrace the bigger picture of who we are, it gives us an insight into how our high sensory intelligence is working. So for instance, one of the key benefits that Rebecca got from the session was how she became aware that her sensitivities that perhaps are sometimes challenging as HSPs, and I'm completely making this up. This isn't something that Rebecca said. I'm illustrating that whilst as HSPs we are born with these higher sensory abilities, it does come with its challenges as well. However, as soon as you can see it in the context, in the way that Rebecca would have seen it in the context where she's like, oh my goodness me, now I see that my high sensory abilities allow me to tune in to the people that are in front of me, to enable them to connect that much more deeply. So as a translator that has the high sensory intelligence gift, she's going to be able to read bodily language much more clearly. She's going to be able to read facial cues more easily. She's going to be able to feel other people's feelings due to her higher levels of empathy. She's going to be able to see the bigger picture from a visionary point of view of perhaps what the benefits are of this communication that she's facilitating, for the benefit of the people that are there. So right there, that is an incredibly important reason that Rebecca has been born with high sensory intelligence and this gift. It's simply because it makes her so much better at the work she does. She's clearly very, very good at what she does, and now she's got this extra level of awareness. So now she's able to see from a higher perspective, a higher point of view. It's like, wow, okay, now I am much more aware of these more subtle cues that are happening around me, to be able to be aware of subtleties in the environment around the people that are in communication. So for instance, sometimes she works in refugee camps where, sometimes it can be a very dangerous situation if people can't communicate properly. So in those instances, Rebecca's going to be able to pick up cues in the surrounding environment, which is going to support perhaps how these people need to be communicating and what may be affecting their ability to communicate, perhaps the things that they're frightened of, or whatever it may be in the environment that's affecting things. So all of this is giving Rebecca more data to allow her to do her job more effectively. So for us to be able to really engage in our high sensory gifts, it's got to begin with a belief in it. It's got to begin with a trust in it. And that is only really going to happen through trying it and through relying on it eventually, of course. But I think in the beginning phases, it is about trusting that it's there and going for it, and knowing that as high sensory intelligent people, the cues and the information that we are getting are important. So this is the piece. When we are receiving the information that we get, so she will be getting triggers in her mind of things to suggest and the ways to facilitate. Now, her impulse to engage in the process is going to be as a result of all this extra sensory information that she's getting from her intuition. As high sensory people, we have higher levels of intuition. So her intuition is going to be supporting the information she's receiving, the cues that she's getting, and therefore she's going to feel an impulse to speak and share a particular piece of information. Or perhaps it might be anything. She might be adjusting the environment in some way. She might be inviting someone to take their sunglasses off, so there's eye contact. Whatever these impulses are, these are the impulses that we have to trust. There we go. This is how we lead into believing it. It is through learning to trust it. It's learning to trust it, and it's learning to act on it. That's the key. So the more that we do that, the better it gets, the better at it we get, and the more we begin to develop it. So as we go along our own path, we may come to realize that we're very, very good in a specific field of our expertise. We work very well with particular people in our expertise. And the more that we hone it and the more that we develop our high sensory intelligence, the better we're going to get at it, the better we're going to get at serving other people through it. But it has to come through that faith to act on it, to actually act on the information that we're being given. And I see this so much because many of us are introverted, and bless us, as introverts, we bring incredible benefits to situations all over the world, in many situations. I don't mean to say all over the world. I mean, as introverts, we are incredibly important in our way of interacting. However, it is so important for us to engage when we feel it's an authentic engagement, when we feel that we know we have something to share. Then we must act on that information. We must speak up when we know it's time to speak up. As introverts, we tend to recuperate energetically through time to ourselves when we have no external sensory information. So when we are free from all of that, and being around people means that we are instantly sharing a lot of data and information as soon as we're in someone's energy field. So that for us can be really draining as introverts. And not all of us are introverts as high sensory intelligent people. I think it's 30% of us are extroverted. So, but this last piece that I'm would love for you guys to consider is that even if we are not comfortable speaking up much of the time, or it feels like we are more effective when we just speak important things that need to be said, my invitation is to trust that impulse that you have to speak up. Because let me tell you, it can totally change the course of a conversation. It could trigger a whole piece of new information and data in a person, which who knows what that could end up, the effect that that could end up having. Because nature's given us this ability to receive more information, and it's no good to anyone unless we're sharing and communicating it. The animal kingdom's got this nailed. They know what they're doing with it. When they go into new territories, they assess the territory and they relay that information to the other animals that are there. We're learning the importance of this trait in us as human beings. And let me tell you, the more you start to trust it, and it's not going to say you're going to get it right every time, but that doesn't matter. None of us can get anything right all the time. But the only way that we learn is by continuing to practice. And the only way that we can continue to practice is if we are doing it live out in the world, in conversations with clients, in our businesses. And as a result of that, it will develop in us, it will grow. We will start to continue this process of ownership, which is so important. Ownership in our bodies, in our hearts, the faith that we have within ourselves to make a change in the world as a result of this amazing gift that we've been given. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. Wherever you may be today, may you be blessed. May you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you again soon. Bye for now. Join me on the next masterclass where I'll show you how to reveal your own high sensory intelligence, bringing you into alignment with your true purpose, career, business, and personal success. To register your place today, visit highsensoryintelligence.com.